So the NBA world is now settled in the reality of Luka as a Laker and what everybody agreed to have been the craziest trade in NBA history. And I think for the most part we've had enough time to sit with it, to see some of the aftermath and kind of make sense of what happened on that day when everybody got the news that Luka Doncic had been traded for Anthony Davis. And now that it seems like the dust has settled, it's time to reflect on that trade and give some context to what really happened, why it happened, and also what it might mean for the future. Because if we can all agree that this is the most shocking trade in NBA history, then it's safe to say that its aftermath is going to have a pretty significant impact on the NBA for many years to come. From the careers of all the major players involved in this trade, to the two front offices but also other NBA players, fans, and the league as a whole, this Luka Doncic trade is one that we can expect to cause a historic shift in the league. Be sure to leave a like on this video. Let's aim for 300 likes on this one. But without wasting any time, here's everything we learned from the Luka Doncic-Anthony Davis trade.
I had an all-star, current NBA all-star text me and say, do you know how much the Mavericks must hate Luka? I mean, this is what they're talking about in the league.
It doesn't take a genius to figure it out, but the biggest thing we learned from this trade was that the Dallas Mavericks really wanted to get rid of Luka Doncic. And we know that because they obviously traded him, but we're now learning more about how aggressively they were trying to get rid of him, with new reports about how Dallas reached out to other teams like the Bucks and the Timberwolves in hopes of shipping him off for Giannis or Anthony Edwards. But as you probably know by now, one of the biggest signs that shows just how much they wanted to get rid of him is the kind of package that they got in return for him. And the best way to see just how weak the package they got in return was is by looking at some of the other blockbuster trades that happened fairly recently. In 2022, when Kevin Durant was traded to the Phoenix Suns, Brooklyn received a total of 10 assets in players, picks, and pick swaps. This was for a 34-year-old Kevin Durant with a serious injury history, and I think we can agree that at that point, his value wasn't what it is for a 25-year-old Luka Doncic. In the previous summer, when Donovan Mitchell was traded to the Cavs from Utah, the Jazz received a total of 8 assets in players, picks, and pick swaps, which at the time seemed fair, but if you remember, Rudy Gobert was traded shortly before Mitchell, and he set a new standard for trades in the modern NBA. In one of the most infamous trades, Utah received a total of 10 assets for Rudy Gobert. That laid the foundation for trades like the one we saw this summer when Mikal Bridges was also traded for 10 total assets, where Brooklyn got 3 players, 6 picks, and a pick swap. Luka's current value is far more than that of any of these players at the time of their trades, but as we know, in return for Luka Doncic, the Mavs got just 2 players and 1 first-round pick. And obviously one of the players he was traded for is Anthony Davis, who is an elite player and arguably top 10 in the league, and I'll talk about him as well. But the reason I just showed these trade packages the way I did is because, as you can see, a player in his prime is almost always exchanged for a boatload of future assets. I mean, just look at this. And when you factor in Luka's age, the fact that he finished top 3 in MVP voting last season, and that he was also just coming from the NBA Finals, then you see that the Mavs traded away one of the top 5 most valuable assets in the league. And to me, that right there is enough proof that the trade wasn't about Luka's upcoming contract, or because Dallas was just simply trying to improve the team, as Nico Harrison talked about. Yes, they probably really wanted AD, but one of the main goals for the Mavs front office, or should I say Nico Harrison, with this trade was to get Luka Doncic out of Dallas. That then raises the big question of why the Dallas Mavericks wanted to trade Luka so much, which brings us to the second thing we learned from this trade, which is that Nico Harrison never let go of Luka's finals performance.
I think it's important to know that Jay Kidd and I, we've had a vision in the culture that we want to create since we've been here. And the players that we're bringing in, we believe exemplify that. And, we think defense wins championships. And we're bringing in one of the best two-way players in the league.
After listening to that press conference by Nico Harrison and Jay Kidd following the trade, there are a few things that we can point to for why Dallas was looking to get rid of Luka. One thing that Nico Harrison said that the media also pointed to a lot was that he believes that defense wins championships. That was obviously not received well because many felt like it's not a good reason, but it makes this move make a little bit more sense. Because just last June, the Mavs were competing for the championship, and one of the biggest holes on the team was Luka's defense. During the NBA Finals, Luka's defense was one of the most covered topics, and there was a lot of coverage about how bad it was and about how much he was complaining to the refs. If you recall, in Game 3 of the Finals, Luka fouled out and about 3 of his fouls were completely uncalled for. And even then, he was blaming the refs in the post-game, yelling at the coaches to challenge his bad fouls, and even though that wasn't the first time it happened, It was the first time that issue really came to light for many NBA fans.
His defensive performance is unacceptable. He is a hole on the court. The Celtics are attacking him. They are ahead in this series because they have attacked him defensively. His performance in this game is unacceptable, and the reason why the Mavericks are not going to win. They're never going to get to this tunnel with the trophy if he doesn't improve those aspects of his game.
But Luka's defense wasn't just bad because it was historically abysmal. There's a metric known as blow-by percentage allowed on drives, which, as you can tell from the name, measures how often a defender is completely beaten by a ball handler when they attempt to drive past them. And in 3 of the series he played in last year's playoffs, Luka recorded the highest blow-by percentage allowed on drives that the league has seen in the playoffs in the last decade. And in the finals specifically, Jaylen Brown and Tatum were constantly looking for that matchup and abusing Luka whenever he was in front of them. And I know he wasn't 100% healthy in that series, but when you pair that with all the complaining to the refs and the terrible body language he showed on the defensive side of the ball all series, you see that it left a bad taste in the mouth of many NBA fans, and clearly Nico Harrison. And I'm not saying that it justifies trading him, but one thing that's pretty clear is that this was a big reason that led Harrison to go through with this trade, and almost every time he was asked about his thought process with this move, he mentioned defense and something along the lines of the culture of the team. But another explanation that was given for trading Luka was that Dallas is trying to win now, and there's actually an argument to be made that Anthony Davis puts them in a place to do just that. If a team is trying to build a culture based on their defensive identity, then there actually aren't too many players better than Anthony Davis to build around. Which brings me to the next thing we learned from this trade, which is that Anthony Davis was the biggest winner from this whole situation, at least at the current moment. I know that Anthony Davis and the rest of the Mavs bigs are currently sidelined due to injury, so this really only applies if they can stay healthy. Let's not forget that AD is in that conversation for the best two-way player in the league and has also been a top 3 player at his position this season. When you pair that with the fact that he's joining a team that just came from the NBA Finals, then you see that he's surrounded by the kind of complementary pieces and role players that the Lakers have been lacking for the past couple of seasons, and on top of that, he's also teaming up with 2 other former NBA champions who know exactly what it takes to win at the highest level, with Kyrie also playing all-star level basketball. So you have 2 superstars who are battle-tested, with a good coaching staff and solid role players around them. The West is currently in an interesting place, with the only team that's fully constructed to win now being OKC, but Dallas is the same team that knocked them out of the playoffs last season, mainly because of their bigs, and we know that the biggest kryptonite for OKC is a team with length and a lot of athletic bigs, as we saw when they played the Bucks in the in-season finals. So with the bigs and the championship experience that the Mavs have, they have a legit chance to make it out of the West in at least one of the next 3 seasons. And the best part about it for Anthony Davis is that with Dallas, he'll have a chance to play the exact kind of basketball that he's been trying to play for a long time now.
I think we need another big. I feel like I've always been at my best when I've been the 4. And having the big out there, we know it worked when we won the championship with JaVale and Dwight.
Although that was his wish during his time in LA, the Mavs roster also gives him that chance to play the 4 next to some great bigs, which is a style that he has always thrived in since his days with the Pelicans. So that's why I believe that at the current moment, Anthony Davis is the biggest winner in this trade.
Any concerns that because you brought in a young star, that some of these priorities kind of might shift more towards the future rather than the present?
What's wrong with that?
Now, outside of Luka and AD, no other star player was impacted by this trade as much as LeBron. The end of the LeBron Davis era in LA might as well be looked at as the end of LeBron's time seriously competing for a championship. And I know there's a lot of talk about him and Luka and what they could look like as teammates, since they're 2 of the best offensive players that the league has ever seen. People like Shannon Sharp are out here claiming that the Lakers can make it out of the West.
Let us get OKC in the Western Conference Finals. I guarantee.
Oh my God.
But I actually believe that this pairing is not meant to last long. The reason I say this is not just because LeBron is now 40, but because he and Luka are both extremely ball-dominant players who are also defensive liabilities. Between 2019 and 2024, Luka recorded a top 2 usage rate in the league, and in LeBron's career, he has always led his team in usage rate in every season of his career. And pretty much every guard who's not good off the ball has seen their production suffer when playing with LeBron, like we saw with Westbrook and even D'Angelo Russell. So it's hard to imagine that LeBron will settle for a spot-up shooting role or a heavy off-the-ball role in year 22, and Luka Doncic is definitely not doing so either. And defensively, I already talked about Luka, but LeBron has also deteriorated on that side of the ball over the years, and we can see it this season where he currently has the lowest plus-minus on the Lakers. So that means that this pairing would also make for some of the weakest perimeter defense in the league, and you could surround them with perimeter defenders, but their offense will also be driven by these two and Austin Reeves, and that just adds to the question of what kind of lineups they'll be running. So just based on those numbers, this isn't going to be the championship level duo that many think it will be. And my prediction is that LeBron will be gone as early as next season, whether that means that he's gonna retire or package with Bronny in the summer, but he's definitely on his way out of LA.
One of the biggest international stars now at 25 years old, gets traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. The biggest market in the world for sports is the Lakers.
Now, the most fascinating thing about this trade is its upside and the potential it has to fix the two biggest problems that the NBA currently has. Earlier in the season, it seemed like everyone was talking about how the NBA ratings were going down at a scary rate, and for the last 2 seasons, the league has desperately been looking for the next star to crown as the face of the NBA. With this trade, Luka Doncic may prove to be the answer that the NBA was looking for all along, because we know that he has MVP level talent, but on top of that, Luka also has that international appeal that the NBA is looking to cultivate more and more.
You got the top international player in LA, so the viewership, the ticket sales, everybody, Europe, Spain, they all coming into LA. We know how this. So I'm looking at the business, and I'm like, yo, hold up, this was an amazing business decision by billionaires.
For sure.
So he's now also on the most storied franchise in NBA history, and he now joins a long list of players who are the face of the league in the second biggest market in the NBA. What this trade could do for the league from a business standpoint is so crazy to imagine that some people believe that this trade was carried out by the league for the purpose of saving the NBA ratings. Obviously, that's a bit of a stretch, but the more you look at it, the more you see just how perfectly everything aligned.
You get 10 years of Luka being the face of the Lakers, but you also get to put him with LeBron James, but you get to put him with the guy who's been the face of the league, who can show him how to be the face of the league, and also too, who can show him how to take care of himself the way he needs to take care of himself. That is the best example you can have.
But at the end of the day, it will probably be a few years before we can truly see the fruits of this trade for the Lakers, but there's no doubt that it will keep them relevant after LeBron retires, which will ultimately help to keep more eyes on the NBA as a whole. So whether we recognize it or not, this trade caused a major shift in the league and how front offices will be doing things moving forward. For a superstar like Luka to be traded so ruthlessly, we should expect to see more bold moves from GMs going forward, because the league has been in an era where teams have been very patient with their players and their issues with unavailability, poor conditioning, and mediocrity. But I truly believe that the league is about to move past that to enter an era where front offices will be more willing to trade big names if they're not producing as expected. And it seems like some NBA stars also believe that as well.
When Luka got traded, anybody is able to get traded at that point.
Now, to end this video, I want to quickly touch on one of the stranger parts of this trade, which was the sudden change in heart that the Mavs showed in regards to Luka. We saw talks about his weight and poor conditioning, but many people couldn't help but point out how it seems like there's something the Mavs organization might know about Luka that the public doesn't.
They wanted to get off that asset because they know something the public don't know. And they kept it private.
He didn't know about it, so it's a lot more digging somebody got to do to find out why he got traded, because you don't just trade him at 25. He just went to the finals, you know what I'm saying? So
this is what I can refer to as the Luka Doncic problem that still remains a mystery, because for a team to give away a young talent like Doncic in such shocking fashion, there should be a good reason, whether it's a health issue or a detrimental habit or some behind the scenes situations we know nothing about. So maybe that's something we should keep in mind as we think about how this trade will age. But that's it for the video. Let me know your takeaways and reflections from this trade, or anything that sparked your interest from this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe. But until next time, peace.